Suddenly won't be here, Mr. Fritz. Working.
Okay. Okay. Probably also let the chief.
He's
Last meeting and it's 4 weeks or 3 or something.
well, it's just the days. We're on. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item will be roll call.
All right, Mr. Brown? Here. Mr. Buckley? Absent. Fritz? Absent. Mr. Ricky?
Here.
Mr. Meehan?
Here.
Mr. Mann? Here. Myself, Dr. Gustafson, by video. Pennington. You want to read for this one?
Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes of the previous meeting?
The very last item, Mr. Chairman, there it says we were going to meet on August 25th. It just didn't get changed to today's date, September 8th.
Okay. Are there any other changes or corrections? If not, with that correction, they'll stand approved as presented. Public comment. Sorry. I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we'll go to public comment. Was anything sent in, Ryan?
No.
Part of public comment will be the presentation, Pettis County 911 agreement for our approval. There's a copy of that in the packet. Mr. Tyson is going to be available on Zoom.
Recommend keywords and Tyson both on video or on Zoom. So,
Okay. If there are any questions, they can help with that.
I didn't catch that. It's Mr. Tyson and who else?
And Chief Work, right? Chief Work.
Okay. So are they both available to take questions?
They're on
now?
Zoom now, so.
Okay, all right.
can't see him.
They're up there.
Non-video.
Yeah, that's
Okay, go right ahead.
okay. Mr. Tyson and Chief Works, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I've got a few questions. And if it's okay, I could start on the first page of this here and kind of work through those. Let me say, first of all, Mr. Tyson, you know that I was in favor of central dispatch for a long time, which we've had several meetings in the commission when you and I both worked together at the courthouse. But just some general questions here. First of all, the money has started to come in effective January of this year, and now we're in the 9th month. How much money has that tax generated over the first 8 months of the year?
The dollar amount, I don't have a total in front of me. I can get one right quick. I'm just a few blocks away from the office. I'm actually outside you guys' building.
Well, you can come in if you.
The dollar amount has fluctuated drastically, and DOR is working hard to try to figure out how they can get that leveled out. Some of it's because of COVID, at least that's the excuse I'm getting, is because some of the smaller carriers are only turning in money quarterly rather than monthly like they're supposed to. So I've seen as high as $59,000 and as low as $7,800. So we're averaging about $40,000 a month for the dollar per device, and we're averaging about $8,000 per quarter on the prepaid.
So we brought in $350,000 in the first 8 months, is that right?
Roughly, like I said,
I mean, and I'm not gonna hold you to this, Mr. Tyson, but, I just wanna have some, and where I'm going with this is that the original projection was that we were gonna generate somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 from this tax, and I'd kind of like to know, are we close to that?
We'll be just over the 500,000 if the trends continue. That's, I mean, at $40,000 a month, it's 480,000. You're getting $8,000 a quarter. That's another 24,000. So you're right at the 500,000 or just north of it. You're not nowhere near the 700,000 that I was hopeful for, but they're still working through all of the carriers to make sure everybody's paying.
Okay, so in this agreement, the parties, I hate to monopolize.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, but so the agreement of the parties here is that our ambulance district is going to contribute their dollar figure here over to the amount stated to make up the difference between the operation and that $500,000 that now it's projected to raise, right?
Yes.
Okay, so does that, you've been involved with this from day one, do you see an issue with that as far as creating an appropriate budget with it being on the low side versus the 700,000 that we were hoping for?
No, I think we've been extremely fortunate with some grant money to purchase some of the equipment on the front end. I've written a couple grants that have been funded for stuff that were, I think one of them was 270,000, and then we only had to pay 40% of that. And I have another one that's 100% grant that's currently out there. As long as we can continue those trends, I think we're in really good shape.
Okay, well, and thank you for that. I know you've written a lot of grants for the county, and this is just one example of that, and we definitely appreciate it. Am I also to understand, because I don't think this had a start date on here, but this agreement, although we would be signing it in the very near future, the actual payment or the change in payments would not take effect until January 1 of 21?
That is my understanding. Is that not your understanding, Matt?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Okay. It's set up to where this board would have a director and also have a chairman, a vice chair, and a secretary. So is the county treasurer then going to fill the spot as far as all the financial side of things?
Everything will run through the regular auditing process that any other county office has. So there'll be purchase orders. The treasurer and auditor will transfer money and audit the books just like they would my account since I work for the county. Is that
okay? Yeah, that I mean, that's fine. I think that's a good way to do that. It just that it struck me that there was not a treasurer going to be elected, but in this particular case, I can see why that was the case. So thank you. I'm on page 4 now. In that second paragraph, it talks about the director preparing a budget and the board, the Central Dispatch Board would then review that and make a united recommendation to the parties.
Yes.
Do the parties then accept or reject that budget, or is that?
Yes, absolutely. That should be like 2 sentences later, that if any party, like if the county and the city agreed that to a budget and we took it to you guys, and your board said that's not acceptable to us, it has to go back, and we have to do whatever it takes to get all three parties to sign off on it.
Okay, all right, that's a really good point, and I'm glad that that's the attitude with that, because it's, we're dealing with three different parties here, and somebody might have different insight on something than another party might have. Also in that same paragraph, it says, in the event the board is unable to obtain such support, they will have the responsibility to obtain alternate resources and/or trim expenditures to fit within available funding. What would be the definition of alternate resources?
That could be a grant. It could be as simple as a donation, depending upon what it is that they're trying to do. They may go out and instead of a purchase, they may do a lease purchase that spreads it out far enough out that it would fit under the cap of the budget, so as to be palatable for everybody.
Is there any thought to that this group would actually borrow any money at any time?
Currently, we have a lease purchase of 911 equipment of $980,000. That is a annual payment that we pay Wood in Houston currently. That equipment is being installed as we speak, and that's been added to the budget as it sits.
Okay, I won't dwell on that anymore. Was there, back to Exhibit A, for the final pieces of this, city is going to contribute $300,000. The county of Pettis was going to contribute $200,000 on the previous agreement that I saw, but now it's broke out into two $100,000 pieces. Can you explain that to me?
It was based on call volume. Pettis County, the county of Pettis, which is the sheriff's department, because that's the only entity that we actually control, as you know, their portion based on call volume would have been $100,000. The county commission felt that the other rural communities were not represented that way, and so they took in all the other local, like Pettis County or Fire District, Pettis or Lamont Police Department, Lamont Fire, all the rural fire and law enforcements that aren't sitting at the table are represented in that second $100,000.
You know, when I first read through there, I didn't understand it that way, but you've explained that very well, and I appreciate that. The last thing is that somewhere previous, and for some reason we were over budget, then the three parties would then contribute equally versus the percentages that were originally set up. Is there a reason for that? Did I understand?
Yeah.
Did I ask my question correctly?
You did. I'm trying to. I know that when we talked with the city, they were trying to be able to, and you know, because if you have a budget, and you know that I do everything I can to stay under that budget, but if you have a shortfall, and say your $20,000 shortfall, the position was that it's easier to split that by three than try to figure out the Pettis County Ambulance District over the last year had 22% of the calls or 18% of the calls or whatever it is, and try to do the accounting on the fly. And then do you do the previous year or do you do the last 6 months? This was just cleaner, and that's how we got to the number.
Well, and I guess that makes logical sense. So that leads me to the question that under Exhibit A, that these dollar amounts going forward can be changed because call volume, you're saying that they were based upon call volume, So next year, if the call volume leans more toward the city of Sedalia, their percentage would go up, according to, if this was to be reviewed every year. And I took it to mean that this is what it's going to be continuously.
Matt, do you want to speak to that?
I take it as that is continuously. I'd kind of go back on your point with the thirds. Also, there's the issue of going over budget, and in a sense, it gives us all the same stake in the game, I guess you could say, of if we go over budget, of why as a group. I'm trying to think of maybe a better way to explain that. If we decide there is something, one group or one part of the group decides there's something we all need to be in the same agreement to it. I mean, you're mainly looking at some form of probably equipment that would send us over budget or addition of manpower. My understanding, though, is of this Exhibit A, is that for example, the city's going to pay up to that $300,000. I guess there's always the chance that there could be a reduction. Now there's in that money, but that is spoke about in there. But I don't know, does that answer your question?
Well, I think so. I think your last question, Chief, was, or your last statement there was that, generally speaking, these dollar amounts are going to remain consistent over the next few years. And the only time that there will be any changes in the appropriations or the percentage of each one of those parties would be as if there was an over budget issue.
Yes, that is my intention with it, and my understanding of the city's intention with it. I don't think anybody wants to try to make this be some variable rate that goes up over a course of years. You know, I mean, there is always that chance, probably, you know, one of our next to equipment, our next, if not our highest, will be our employees. And at some point, that is probably going to affect this budget more than anything else in the next, you know, who knows, 3 to 5 years of how we have to look at their salary and their benefits affecting the overall budget. But I think that, again, goes back to play with we're all going to have to sit back down at the table and determine what that figure is at that point. But otherwise, our goal is this budget.
Mr. Tyson, back to you. We're looking now at a budget with the amount that's that you're asking the parties to contribute, of course, on a monthly basis, comes to $650,000, and when we're going to have a $500,000 from the tax. So are we going to properly be able to handle this central dispatch operation on $1.1 million on an annual basis?
Of course, I don't have the Golden Globe to look in to see what the future prices are going to be or what wages are going to be 2 or 3 years.
I kind of counted on you over the years to know that, Mr. Tyson.
Well, I'm
counted on you to have that crystal ball.
Well, you know what I can tell you is the way we have it budgeted, it's comfortable today. If minimum wage goes to $15 an hour, just like you guys, you're going to feel it too. I mean, there's going to be movement. You know, if minimum wage takes another big jump, does that change the bottom line? Yes, but I don't know when that's going to take place or how much.
Well, Mr. Tyson, I would respond to that by saying I appreciate your insight on that because, yeah, we're all going to be subject to different changes. But what I was looking for was just a general answer that $1.1 million is adequate at this time. Nobody's got the crystal ball to know what it's going to take next year, but we have to learn to live within those budgets. So thank you for that.
With the money that the county has been able to save over the last 5 or 10 years, put a little bit back, and the on-hand cash that they have, plus what they've collected this year, puts us in a position to be able to buy up a bunch of years of maintenance and that sort of thing that allows us to be comfortable at least the first couple of years with this plan.
Well, and that brings up another question for me. I know that when we worked together, 911 did not have a lot of money, but it had $150,000 in that pot. Is that still in there and available to be transferred over to the central dispatch?
Yes, depending upon the build out, if we don't have the tables and the chairs and all that stuff put in, I don't know what our unknown expenses are going to be between now and the time we go live. But that is definitely our cushion. The county commission has not touched that since you left. It's drawn a little bit of interest, not much, but a little bit. And we have collected, obviously, the taxes this year, which again gives us the ability to do matches on grants and buy up some years of maintenance.
But that money is available for initial startup and maybe some ongoing operation if necessary.
Yes, we've actually pulled it out of the CD, and what's the Missouri state where you can invest with the state of Missouri?
Yes.
Anyway, that's where the money's at currently. So.
Okay. All right.
MoSIP, that's it. MoSIP.
Chief Ward, and again, Chief Ward, I guess I want to extend to you some sincere appreciation. With this whole process, number one, I know that it took a long time to get to this point. And of course, we probably got to this point because of Mr. Tyson's leadership. But key to that is that the county and the city working together on this project, which has not been a viable option not too many years ago. So thank you for your cooperation and the cities for making this all work.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
My last questions is for financial officer and our chief. So I don't have, maybe somebody else does.
Is there any other questions?
For these guys?
Well, they would like for our approval and signatures on this evening, and Mr. Tyson is going to pick it up and take it over to the city council meeting so they could sign off with their approval. So if there are no other questions, I would take a motion for our approval of this agreement.
Did you say you had some questions for the?
Yeah.
So you might want to wait and vote after that discussion.
Eric and Jamie are not available this evening.
Neither one of them.
Mr. Fritz was going to fill in for Jamie, and I haven't heard anything out of him, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
I would so move that we become a party to this joint communication agreement, that it so be executed, and that we would be obliged to the other parties to let's get this thing kicked off. A second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. You have some comments, but okay. We'll take a few minutes now to get those signatures.
Okay.
Yeah. Roy can get those out to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Chief.
I'm going to have to jump off the call and go on to the city council meeting. Thank you again, guys.
Yes.
I'll bring them over to you, Matt.
So,
Roy, he's out in the parking lot, I think, and Roy's coming out soon.
oh, please, I mean, tell him I said we need the exercise to come on in.
Coming to the meeting.
I can make just as much sense with or without him on that. So are we just in hold here, or you gotta sign this, or what?
Yeah, just getting the.
Oh, okay. I don't want to interrupt you, you need to see what you're signing.
3 copies and you'll have to sign.
I'm everything in triplicate.
Spelling count.
I will be taking this to city, and then hopefully they ratify tonight, and then tomorrow the county commission will sign off.
Jeff Wyman is going to get run over today at the roundabout. I stopped out there and pulled up on the roundabout. Because I got a big car, so I blocked too many, views or whatever. To pick up trash, because there was like, water bottles and everything. So I picked up a whole bag of trash. Picked that up and he came by just to harass me or whatever. So he just goes around on Winchester and parks on the side. And then everybody's giving me dirty looks because he's got this big old truck, That's the next time you stop, just pull right up here on the red zone up here and you'll be out of water. You just have to stop and give me all the time. After I had all the trash picked up. That's usually when help shows up, right?
Yeah.
When the job's done.
Was that something somebody just dumped, or was it?
Oh, it just accumulated, and it's probably not any more than you would see anywhere else, except the Lions Club is responsible for that roundabout, the inside piece of that. And we really take pride in keeping it nice and everything else. And actually, we got plans to try to put a flagpole there, but that's down the road. But yet, we don't take care of the street or the grass around on the outside of the highway department there. But when people see this today, a Lions Club sign out there, they just think we're responsible for everything. So, there's bottles out there, and people throw water bottles out and stuff, and cans, and so it's just, easier just to go by and pick that up since I live right away, I just pull over and get it, you know. Yeah. No big deal. Still online here, or else I'd say something about Doc's shirt, but he doesn't have to Pettis. He's just a shirt on his view. That's right.
Where's Chief at? Vacation. Jesse too? Yeah.
You wait for him. Sign the report.
Time his meeting started.
Fell flat asleep.
I'm sorry. what were you doing?
got it on. It's perfect.
That's just the bills. Everybody wants to look good, they're welcome to look good. Yeah. The same with the bank statement here.
Ready, Ryan? Move on to the officer's report, which happens to be the CFO report.
I do apologize. I fell asleep sitting up after eating dinner and stuff. This is the financials for July, which takes us 5/12, so 58% of the way through the year. You can see on the budget performance sheet, the things that we highlighted are two green lights. Being 58% of the way through the year, we've got budget income of 60%, budget expenses, operating expenses at 58%. A couple of things to point out. The one thing that is out of line that we can see pretty quickly is the operating expenses. At the 65%, you look over at the those line items on page 20. About halfway down the page, where you see insurance expense, you've got each little broken down. Excuse me. That would be insurance expense being 78%. All those are prepaid, so that's the reason those are out there at that. Operating expenses. The one down below, next one down, insurance expenses, we go to total operating expenses. The operating expenses, actually, you pick up those on page 18. Starting under about 3/4 of the page, way down, it's the first expenses out below income. They're actually up 9%, and that's due to COVID. Due to the COVID-19, you'd see under medical supplies, which is under the operating expenses on page 18, about 3/4 of the way down. If there was anything unusual. Any questions? Go page 28. Just because of the bills that were paid, and then of course, where we actually stand with our budget, we're actually down about 7% than what we were last time we spoke. Which leaves us at days of cash on hand. 420. versus 442. Checking account register, couple things I might want to point out in there. You see a $4,078 void or debit. It was the actual void of the check that was lost in the mail. That was for the furniture in the day room over here to Missouri Furniture. Subsequent to that, we put that on the card and canceled that payment, that check. You see that figure show up again underneath the credit cards. Another item in here that you might wonder what the heck we got going on. So we received 223.50 from Mike Gardner. We hadn't received that check in a while. That was the first check we received, federal check, since February of this year. Accounts payable and then the unpaid bills. Here's where we pick up the unpaid bills. Over here, we see that Gardner deal halfway down the page, 223.50. We have to, what we do is we deposit that in our account, which you saw the deposit, and then we write a check to the insurance company for that amount. So that's what those transactions are. Questions on the unpaid bills?
Are there any questions?
On page 20, I guess Mr. Chairman, looking at first, to refresh my memory, direct deposit fees, $940. The bank is charging us for making direct deposits, or I guess I don't know where that charge is generated from. And maybe that's a question we can say for Mr. Goodman.
What were you at again?
Page 20. Actually, it's like the fourth item, the fourth line up there, direct deposit fees, $940. I was just curious what that was. Sure somebody told me before, but another piece there too was the interest income. The rates are so low. I don't know if we need to adjust budget because of that small amount or not, but that's exactly what it was. On page 28, ambulance vehicle replacement, did we actually pay for that unit yet? Was it to come out of this account?
Yes, what we're going to do, we just finally received, I think in the last couple of days, the final billing, large billing for that unit, which was the radios. I think it was around 5,000. So that amount will be given, I think he forwarded that to Jamie in an email. We were waiting on that bill, and then when we get that, we'll add that to it, pull the exact amount, the largest exact amount we can out of that. That's fine. Good plan. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'd take a motion to approve payment of outstanding bills.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Chief's report, Roy.
Everything's been going smoothly. We've, had one of our units in the shop got breaks all the way around, air conditioning issues. They got returned all day. It's back on running. She had another truck that went in today for some cruise reporting, some heavy jerking, transmission shipping. So we haven't got a diagnosis on that. Yet. I'm not 100% sure of that. Got the sales agreement for the ambulance. I wanted to get it in the packet, but I didn't get that opportunity for Thursday came. So I do have it. The total $216,995. A little bit less than the last one, but there was if we're trading trucking, we can use some of the stuff that's on the old truck. So that's not a long. But at the rate we're going right now, we just take delivery the mid to end of January. So got it. No other building issues to report. Everything's going fine. Call line was attached to the packet. Pettis had a total of 671. 440 transports, 231 road transports. Windsor was at 103, 61 transports, 42 no transports. Non-transports are up, but I don't have exact numbers to in front of me to tell you, but know that our car accidents are up quite a bit more than they. And whenever those happen, you get 5, 6, 7, 8 people sometimes that are injured and want to go to the hospital, but at least up to generator report. Most likely. Other than that, I don't know anything else. You guys have any questions or anything that you want to talk about? Any questions for Roy?
Thank you, Roy. Let's move on to the medical director.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I was feeling bad that I did not have my logo shirt on for Mr. Meehan, so I went and grabbed my jacket out of the closet here in the office, and so I have.
You're looking good, Doc.
Have the appropriate wear on. Again, not really anything, any issues to report with the crews and patient care. The main issue that everybody's having to deal with is a lack of paramedics available for hire. There's just a huge shortage in the whole state. And fortunately, we're in a pretty good situation with our staff right now. But I think we are down 1 or 2, if I'm not mistaken. Roy, is that true?
We were, but we are we actually with some of the new guys just not getting their licenses. We're actually sitting pretty good as far as paramedics go. Better than most, probably.
So really, no news is good news. And so that's about all I have for you folks tonight.
Doc, it's probably been a year ago, but the question was brought up in regards to our in-house training. And I believe the comment at that time was that, you know, we don't want to train more than what we can use to flood the that work talent. But now we're on the other swing of that. What's caused the swing?
The folks are, there's a lot of medics that are being pulled out of the system because the hospitals are hiring them and they're working, you know, they're paying them more money than we can make or than they can make in a ambulance service. And, you know, they're working in a controlled climate environment, and, you know, they work their 12-hour shift and go home. They don't have to work 24 or 48 hours. And so it's really put a crimp in the supply. There are fewer schools in the state for paramedic training, and a lot of the medics that are going through are EMTs from specific services. And so when they finish their paramedic training, it was, you know, part of a obligation that, okay, we'll pay for your paramedic training, but you're going to work for us for 2 or 3 years. Whatever arrangement they've worked out with their home agency. And so these classes that are coming out, the folks that are graduating are pretty much largely spoken for already and committed to working for their home agency for a certain amount of time. So they're just not, the pool's not expanding like it used to.
So would you have a recommendation for our educational component here at Pettis County Ambulance District? Do we need to ramp up? Do we need to offer more classes? What would you recommend?
Well, paramedic training is different from the EMT training that we have here. There are more stringent guidelines. In fact, there has to be affiliation with an institution of higher learning now to have, excuse me, to have a paramedic training program. And so there's just not that many in the state anymore. What we may be, and I think what we have done in the past is that we have paid for the training for some of our EMTs that we hire, and then they come and work for us, come back and work for us, you know, for a certain amount of time. And I think that's probably going to be the model that we're going to have to rely on for some time. I just don't see that changing much in the near future.
Any other questions?
Roy, how many of our EMTs went and graduated and went up to and became paramedic last 12 months? Right off the top of your head? 4 or 5. 4 or 5, okay. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Any other questions for the doctor? Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome.
Committee reports, strategic planning committee, and they've got a meeting set up for the committee next week. I don't have that date right here. But, hopefully by the end of the month or the 1st of October, we'll have outline for you folks. We move on to unfinished business, 16th Street property discussion. I think Mr. Fritz visited Mr. Foster.
Yeah, I checked with Frank on, I guess, Friday. And I indicated to him the inquiry regarding what our position is with regard to disposition of the property on West 16th and using the services of a realtor. Mr. Foster indicated to me that, you know, a couple of things. One, he would treat it if he were us in the sense that it would be same as any other service or item we would bid out. Whereas, you know, one, we're not bound by that particular bid statute, which we have to be so cautious about because of our sovereign tax immunity. But the fact is in our past background, we've always tried to bid things out. So, you know, his recommendation would be to, you know, make a bid proposal, RFP, and to go from there as far as an avenue, potential avenue of choosing the services of a realtor who is so inclined to want to do that. at that point, you know, we, just like anything else, we're not bound to accept the lowest price. We're not bound to, by anything other than, you know, picking the best bid that would be best for the taxpayer. It could be in value, it could be in services, it could be in price. So, I mean, we pretty much are able to choose in the same sense that we would if it were a service provider extended or being offered to us with regard to the vendor.
Are we getting any response out of economic development or anybody, or sign or anything?
Yeah, you know, there may be an inquiry once every couple of weeks maybe. But the recent ones might have been, we want to sell an acre.
Yeah, no, I just,
Yeah.
that's my next question.
You know, I know we had originally thought about putting this in the hands of the realtor and what advantages that would have for the taxpayer, so.
You know, it's really not costing us anything other than mowing the grass, right? We pay no taxes on it. And I don't know what we do on insurance.
But it wouldn't cost us anything either to have a specific agent that is, I don't know if there is an area of expertise for retail or development of that type. And as I expressed at our last meeting, you know, giving it to economic development today in Pettis County, I think that was a great first start, but that's not their focus. They're looking for manufacturing and, you know, businesses and people doing what, and so, but that would be the kind of the key there. There's no cost of that, but we'd want somebody that has those contacts with hotels, motels, restaurant chains. You know,
But their cost is commission, right? If
Yeah.
they sell it,
And that commission would not be due and payable until they
until
go,
we sell.
right, to the, yes, correct.
You know, there's, naturally, we're gonna try to do local stuff, but we don't have commercial realtors here. Really.
No, you know, you could, you know, by theory, you can go through multiple lists and see what offices, what brokers have sold the existing commercial property locally. You know, you could dive into, you know, their experience in the commercial property.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that kind of stuff would all be a part of that RFP. You know, we tell them what kind of property we want, what's, you know, why do they feel qualified to sell it for us? And, you know, we can, you know, we did that with several other really big items. And so let the, you know, in essence, put the realtor, you know, put them on the job to let them put the best package together. I mean,
Let them sell their stuff.
yeah, you know, I mean, there might be a sleeper out there that's selling some of that stuff that we don't know, if they got contacts on.
And keep in mind, if we decide to list exclusively the property, most everybody we're talking about is a member of multiple listing service, which is a service that allows that realtor to put our property, list with Realtor A, puts it in book of multiple listing service in the computer, and all realtors out there, A to Z, can co-broke and sell that property. So the listing agent would always get a portion of the commission. So. And we could continue to keep our listing with Pettis County Economic Development, so.
I would be in favor of and inclined to suggest that we do an RFP to get us over there.
That's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. And, and let some of the big boys that sell that commercial stuff.
So would you put that in the form of a
I
motion?
so move.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Good move.
Like Mr. Brown said, it's not costing us anything now, and the next step won't cost us anything either.
Right.
At this point, we're gonna give up something at the tail end, but we can decide that at the end, whether or not we accept it.
Exactly, yeah. Since we have no new business, we'll move on to announcements.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have
Yes.
any new business either, but I mentioned earlier, but you guys were busy signing and that needed to be done, and of course, I was the one who made the motion to accept, but I guess the question that I had was really for the chief and the financial officer. That increases our payments about $25,000 a year. So, if we're gonna look at a budget next year, flat revenue, et cetera, where is that $25,000 gonna come from? And I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just saying that that's gotta be part of that thought process, okay? And the other piece there is that, we're going into this and, they were projecting anywhere between $500,000 and $700,000 revenue. Well, it's on the low side. So, and maybe that might change. Who knows? Just like Mr. Tyson said, he doesn't have a crystal ball, but, they're already committed to, what was it, close to $200,000 or close to $1 million in lease purchase. And that's, in essence, that's a loan. It just means that you don't own it until the end of the lease. And so, when we're looking at the budget on an annual basis that I guess they will present to us in October, which is just next month, that those payments got to be a piece of that. So it's just maybe I focus too much on the number side of things, but I'm just saying we need to move forward cautiously because this is a big chunk of money.
Good point. Are there any other announcements? If not, I'd take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
The training we were going to have 2 months ago, was that still on the